Night, and you are live with Metaverse Watchdogs and my guests Marc Moglen and Richard Morant. And tonight we are going to speak about music, NFTs, and the Metaverse. How are you, gentlemen?
Mark?
Very well. Thanks so much for having me on.
We can't wait to hear more about what you're doing. And really, maybe you could give us a little bit of an introduction about how you, well, no, I don't want to jump into it right away, but tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now. Maybe we'll start with that, what you're doing right now.
Well, yeah, I think it's yeah, I can weave in a bit about how I got here with what I'm
Okay,
doing
great.
now. So,
Mm.
in a previous life, i.e., like 10, 15 years ago, I was a musicology researcher at the
hmm
University of Leipzig in Germany.
hmm
I had designed my own course of study at UC Berkeley as an undergrad in psychoacoustics and music perception, and wanted to pursue that in postgraduate work. That brought me to the University of Leipzig, home of Johann Sebastian Bach. It's called the city of music, actually. So it was a very attractive place for me to study experimental musicology. And so I became acquainted with some of the top researchers in the field during that time as I was looking at experimental tonality and new kinds of tonal systems. And one of them was Bill Satharis, who's a longtime professor of electrical engineering at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And I stumbled upon his book, and that really became the hallmark of what I wanted to focus on and research on. His
hmm
book was Tuning Timbre Spectrum Scale, and it was truly groundbreaking and answered so many of my questions about how scales are formed from a algorithmic and technical perspective.
hmm
And another researcher who I saw he was working with, and who I got to meet at the time in England, is Andy Milne, who's now at Western Sydney University. He's a staff researcher, and he recently gave the keynote address at the International Music Perception Conference. So both of these researchers are really preeminent in the field of music technology. And honestly, it didn't work out with the whole PhD direction, although it was an amazing experience. I decided to go in a more entrepreneurial business development direction. Um, but I collected a lot of great information at that time, and fast forward 10 years, and this NFT thing came around, and I called up my contacts and I said, hey, have you guys, you've been working on music technology and algorithmic music for since forever. Um, what do you think about this whole NFT thing? And I said, NF what? They had not um, come across it, really. It wasn't their space. And I started that kicked off a conversation around 6 or 7 months ago. And what we were able to spin up a project relatively quickly because they had done so much work and research in this in the past. And that
hmm
project is called Chrono Circles, spelled Xrono, chrono as in Greek for time, circles. And really excited about it. You can check it out at chronocircles.com, and that's essentially a portfolio page where we talk about what it's all about. And what it's all about is asking the question of what makes a good rhythm good. Turns out there's a lot of psychoacoustic and musicological research on that matter, and they were able to put these into three different algorithms which define good rhythms and compose over those algorithms, i.e., it's human composition and algorithmic composition together, and create one-to-one visuals from those compositions. And the result are these really entrancing musical pieces which have these visual elements as well. And we call those chronocircles.
I'm fascinated. First one.
Yeah.
Before we carry on, there's a word here floating around that maybe needs a little bit more defining for people. What do you mean by the word musicology?
Musicology is broadly the study of music aside
hmm
from music performance. So it's like the history of music, how music is made, music theory, and the field that I was in specifically was called experimental or empirical musicology, dealing with electronic music, computer music, new directionalities for music.
hmm
And certainly we're in a time now where music is taking on a very new direction with the capacities of Web3 and NFT. And that's really struck my interest in the past couple of years. And I've been fortunate to go on a number of podcasts and conferences and talk about that topic and work not only on chrono circles, but on the larger music NFT space as a transformative space in the industry.
So then the first thing that comes up whenever we start talking about music then is music rights, licensing,
Mm-hmm.
and how the money flows. What do you see as someone who's actually studied in this? What do you see the advancements that NFTs allow changing the system of how musicians get paid?
Yeah, it was interesting. Early in the NFT days, like all of like a year ago, you
Hmm.
know, um, I heard very serious commentators make the claim that I was baffled by, which was when you sell an NFT, you sell all the rights to the art
Hmm.
underlying it. And I thought, no, that's just not the case, right? So an NFT
Hmm.
does not evaporate the 100+ years of copyright law that's
Hmm.
been beaten into law through case after case after case. And just NFTs did not evaporate that. So
Hmm.
licensing rights. I mean, Shauna, you know this from the art world, right? I'm sure you've come across this a lot, right? Licensing rights, rights to reproduce. I mean, what you can do with it, how you can share it. This is nothing new in the art world and certainly nothing
Hmm.
new in the music world, and it's still all there. So now what's happening
Thank you.
is I think everyone's gotten the wake up call and they see that yes, all of these rights are still relevant. And in order to have a valid NFT platform or share your NFTs, you really need to specify which rights you're giving. You need to call up your lawyer essentially and write the
Hmm.
contracts properly.
Hmm.
And that's it's just there's no other way around it. You do
Hmm.
see a lot of players trying to kind of skirt that fact and just try to launch
Hmm.
platforms without thinking about the legal implications. But it's really the players that are getting serious about the regulations early on, which will be more long-standing and have more serious platforms. And we certainly do see that, I think, as more capital comes into the space.
Do you think players like, particularly someone like Apple Music, who have always been ahead on the tech side of this, are going to start actually moving into the space of NFTing and working with NFTs?
Well, let's take a look at that. Google recently announced, a parent company Alphabet,
Hmm.
that they are going to, oh my gosh, hold on, wait for it, launch a blockchain division.
Hmm.
And I said, this is huge news. Not that they're launching a blockchain division, that they're 10 years late.
Hmm.
Okay. And then I started digging a little bit into it. I said, why are they 10 years late? I thought they were like the most innovative company in the world, right?
Hmm.
And you could see the quotes from their executives saying, we're just kind of waiting to see what the demand is from the market. Seems like people are kind of getting into this crypto thing and we're going to have to do something in order to kind of keep up. That doesn't sound like innovation to me. That
Hmm.
sounds like follow because you want to make sure you have your piece of the market share.
Hmm.
I suspect the case is very similar with Apple, which
Hmm.
is that when you own Web 2 and you control Web 2 and you invented Web 2, you're not that excited about disrupting Web 2. Now, of course, you have to make some noise about it. You have to kind of put some PR out there.
Hmm.
But, if it means total disruption of their ecosystem, I'm guessing they're not super excited about all aspects of that.
Hmm. You see, I see the other side of that one in one case and one case only. And I think that I'm backed up in this by what's been released and announced the last couple of days. I don't think that Mark Zuckerberg's play for Web3 was Facebook based. Okay. I
Go on.
think the world has skipped a little trick here. And I see that the next competitor to take out OpenSea is Instagram.
Well, it's two sides of
Because
the same coin, isn't it? I mean, they're both owned
exactly.
by Meta, right? So,
Exactly. But I mean, I think that Zuckerberg's first play into the Web3 space isn't going to be creating a metaverse. I think he's going to monetize NFT photography through Instagram. And they've
good.
already started, they announced this week that they're looking into an NFT platform based in Instagram, which basically takes all of the photography on the planet and NFTs
Well, is
it.
is that the claim that they made about photography, or are you reading into that?
That I'm reading into the lines. I'm reading
Okay,
between the
because
lines for
because
that.
I took a little look at that as well,
Mhm.
and the only solid plan that was announced at South by Southwest was something along the lines of being able to. Now I haven't read the whole transcript, so
Mhm.
I'm extrapolating here. That to be able being able to sell virtual clothes in I guess, whatever metaverse they're making. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, which to me sounded like a fairly shallow play in terms. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
what you're saying is far more impactful to the art
Mm-hmm.
space and to the photography space, and something that seems like Instagram would be well positioned in. That, but again, they sound like they're taking tepid steps
Mm-hmm.
in line with my thesis that they don't really like Web3,
Yeah.
and they're just having to do something to keep up.
I agree with you there on the catch up. Instagram's the only one that I think might actually make a breakthrough because it's got so much captivated digital art already being produced on it that as soon as they get a flow of being able to platform it and then sell it, it just to me looks like a marketplace that is so far open for them, and they already have so many users that if something's going to break OpenSea, which I mean, I'm sure Sean knows, we've spoken about this more than once before. I don't see OpenSea being the dominator in the NFT platform for a long time. I think that the
Hmm.
second mover in the space is going to completely cover them. I don't see where it is, but Instagram putting its hand up and going, we want to play with NFTs with their user base. If
No, I
they're
think I
thinking
think I
about
think
it and
it's an
they've said
awesome I think
something
it's an
about
awesome
it,
potential. I think it's an awesome potential. Block,
mm,
but I'll say again, Alphabet just launched a blockchain division recently.
mm-hmm,
There's something going on here that I don't know if we're really clear about. What you and I agree
mm,
on is the most innovative and clear step is not what they announced. Okay.
mm-mm,
And we're talking about some of the largest corporations in the world.
mm-hmm.
This is not a little shop that's coming out of a garage in Silicon Valley.
Well,
Okay.
it was a long time ago.
It was, but it sure ain't now.
No,
It
it's not.
sure
Henry,
ain't now.
let me interrupt just for a moment. We have a question, and maybe from this question we can also apply the same question to
Mm-hmm,
the music industry as well. And this question here says, speaking of regulation, what does the panel think of tokenization of real estate as NFTs, enabling the smaller investors to invest, especially the essentially decentralized REITs? What do we think of that?
I have a very serious thoughts in this one. Okay, so before I came into doing the documentaries and so on, I was working in real estate and particularly the 3D scanning of real estate in Manhattan and in New York. And to me, the opportunity in for NFTing isn't the actual real estate itself; it's the title deed.
Yeah.
And what can happen there with title insurance and title deeds of being able to unrevoke them and being able to update houses and keep that system locked and loaded, because the amount of money that moves around and has to be paid for title insurance and title deeds in the back end of the real estate industry is astronomical. So people who go in and change their houses without changing their plans and what that does to insurance and the purchasing process. I think that before they NFT real estate and actually make real estate transactions on a smart contract, I think the title system happens first, and then it goes into the selling of houses because it's a digitized system already that is already antiquated and run on plans in buildings that people have to go and search and check. It's a ridiculously old legacy system that is absolutely dying to be renovated.
Hmm.
So I think that especially so one of the things I was working with 3 years ago was I was actually working with a very large insurance company in Manhattan, and this was just after the hurricane had hit Miami. And what they found, they were using 3D scans of houses before they'd been damaged by the hurricane to claim on insurance. And there was this massive spike in Miami for 3D scans for insurance. So I think the convergence of those two technologies, NFTs and 3D scans, together will get into the title deed part. And then from there, once you've got title deeds that have been NFT'd, that's jump to be able to NFT actual real estate becomes a lot simpler. And that's my little rant and waffle. Thank you.
I mean, I don't have a lot. I don't have a lot to add to that. I think that's I mean, clearly you know a lot about that space, Richard, and the questioner Rohit also clearly knows a lot about that space, given the nature of the question. Um, One thing I will say is that real estate was one of the earliest examples in the NFT conversation.
Hmm.
It's been talked about, for quite some time. I suspect it is indeed regulation, which is the big lingering question
Hmm.
in terms of whether NFTs are viewed as securities or not, and other SEC related questions. And I think no one really knows the answer. And when those and maybe that's creating some timidness in the part of startups and investors because you launch a big program in this, and then a certain regulation could change the game a lot.
Hmm.
But certainly the decentralized nature of NFTs make it a worldwide phenomenon, and it's really exciting, given what you're saying, Richard, to think about real estate as a global game and not just these
Hmm.
antiquated systems that exist in silos in markets around the world.
I think the other thing to touch base on there is as the development of smart contracts grow, because I think that as the world is getting into NFTs, the word NFT and the art of NFT is actually slightly distracting from the power of the smart contract and what is able to be done with smart contracts. And thinking of, okay, yes, the smart contract is giving me scarcity on a digital asset, yes, but how else can we manipulate the usability of programmable decision making?
Well, I think that's a very central question. But there needs to be a large project
Hmm.
undertaking to change the word NFT.
Hmm.
Okay. Like, who's using the word fungible? Who came up with that? I still don't know who came up with the word fungible. I mean, it was a word in the lexicon before non-fungible tokens, but
Hmm.
I never heard it in the context of
Digital
startup or
assets.
engineering speak.
Hmm.
And somehow, the spelling bee champ got in there and put fungible in the blockchain, and now it's non-fungible tokens. I mean, first of all, it's a negation, starts with a negation, non, which
Hmm.
is not the best marketing strategy, although I use it a lot. I'm not a great
Hmm.
marketer. Um, I mean, look, it scares people away. It's also like
Hmm.
saying something like, instead of talking about the internet and e-commerce, talking about like HTML, MySQL, and
Hmm.
and you get my point? Like, it's the
Hmm.
underlying technology, folks.
Hmm.
It's not the thing you should be talking about, and it just keeps this niche and prevents it from going mainstream. So
Hmm.
I like the term smart contract. That sounds very attractive. Digital assets. Let's just
Hmm.
talk about the projects as they are, collectibles, right? What does it do? What does it do in
Hmm.
terms of music and IP? And I suspect in many other places, it creates verifiable digital scarcity. That's the thing that really matters, right? Is that
Hmm.
there's a limited quantity and it's verifiably limited. That creates a market that wasn't there before with
Hmm.
all kinds of digital assets, um, especially music.
So then, now backing into the music side a little bit deeper, then, and talking about contracts and music, and before we were talking about licensing and how that works. Um, with the actual back end working of how the music industry works, I'm not sure how individual contracts are going to solve things for music because there's so many intricacies of of how music gets used and who uses it, and then more importantly, how you track it. I mean, because great, you might have the ownership of a piece of music, you might have the NFT from it, but it's the same as photography. Anyone can sit and record it and play it again and use it.
Well, I think again, as painful as it is, lawyering up is going to be really central.
Hmm.
And it's not there's not just a one sentence contract which is gonna gloss over all this. You know how royalties are split, how mechanical and performance rights work out. What about PROs? What about
Hmm.
how it's different in every single country in the world? I mean,
Hmm.
look, that's why we have a lot of siloed operations in the music NFT space. None has come to the fore as utterly prominent. We haven't
Mhm.
seen the big players in the room like Spotify, Apple Music do anything in the space notably. Um, it well that's a slightly different reason, but basically it requires getting that right. And so there are some
Mhm.
players getting it right, and it is possible to do. It basically takes the form of a hybrid, and its most
Mhm.
effective way it's hybrid. I think Web3 cannot fully negate Web2. Like
Mhm.
YouTube's going to be there, Spotify, and I'll spend probably most of this conversation about why Spotify should be destroyed, but Spotify is going to be there. Um, Apple Music's going to be there. All the Web2 is going to
Mhm.
be there. NFT has to be an add-on. It's a new revenue stream, and it will be prominent for some artists, but they're going to have to leverage all these mechanisms that exist as well.
Mhm.
And that's why contracts are also like that in the space,
Mhm.
in which it will allow artists to put their music for streaming, do what they want
Mhm.
on that side, but maybe on the NFT side, it's going to be more of an exclusive relationship or
Mhm.
non-exclusive with certain terms. This is the kind of stuff that has to be worked out.
Now, do you think, I mean, as you've been in the university kind of system, are the lawyers and so on at the moment that you know of starting to make more lookings into this? Because again, Shauna will testify, we've been saying for a while now that we need the first big lawsuit. We need the first few underlying precedences to start coming through so that we can move forward in the regulation process. How do
Well,
you
it doesn't.
see
It,
the
it sure. It
law
sure doesn't. It
department?
sure doesn't help. It sure doesn't help that all the NFT project launchers shroud their identity in 8-bit images.
Hmm.
Um, it sure doesn't help that every NFT project they launch appears to be more infantile and stupid than the next.
Hmm.
It sure doesn't help that there's been significant evidence of
Fraud.
fraudulent activity in the
Hmm.
NFT
Hmm.
market. It, with practically no KYC AML. And I mean, these
Hmm.
are things hindering the space. And there are actually really good lawyers in this space. I mean, they're showing up at
Yeah.
conferences. You can look it up on LinkedIn. I've met several, and
Hmm.
they're looking at this. They're excited about it. They want to create new kinds of, models that work. They're working with companies all the time. But I think you're right. I think this is an extremely immature market,
Hmm.
typified by immature projects, by immature people. And I'm not going to
Mm.
pull my punches. And if you want me to pull my punches, you got the wrong
This is
guest on the air.
look. No, this is the
Because
place where we punch
because
hard.
yeah, yeah, and I get it. Play nice, I get it. But, I mean, what did I, find today? One of the top projects on Solana's marketplace, um, cracked sets. I think it's pronounced cats. Cracked cats. It's
Mm.
just a bunch of cracked cats. This is their tagline. This is one of these like PFP projects launching like 8 nine
Hmm.
thousand. Okay, there's no sorry there's 757 listed, and the floor price is quite high.
Do you know
It's
what
just a bunch of
shocked me? Do you know what
cracked
shocked
cats.
me
I
with
mean,
it?
yeah.
When I actually
Go ahead.
started looking into how these things are made. I mean, I've been a
Yeah,
technician and a visual
yeah,
technician
yeah,
in
yeah.
Photoshop and so on for as long as I can remember. And so I was like, okay, so how are they making these things, and what's actually how difficult is it? And I know myself, I could make a 10,000 project over a weekend. It's not difficult.
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course, of
It's
course.
not.
And so, let me just read this brief passage for you, and you tell me, Shauna, from your lifetime in the arts, how this impresses you. It's
Go
just a
ahead.
bunch of correct sets, misspelled by the way, who are up to a whole of rat shit. I'm reading verbatim. Whole up to a whole of rat shit that are living and chilling and vibing together. They're picking bullshit cat fights, posting their own mugshots, catcalling the cops, and stirring whatever they can to keep the high going. It's one of
Mm.
the top projects on the Solana marketplace, and I think it shows why everybody laughs at the NFT space because this is laughable. Am I
Yeah,
missing
look,
something? Is this am I just like being a harsh critic here? I mean,
no, I agree. And look, I have said for a long time that there's a certain amount of quality that needs to be eradicated. And when we go through I mean, I don't think we've had the crypto winter. Well, we've had the crypto winter. We haven't had the NFT winter. You know what I mean? But there needs to be an elimination of the projects that are causing the bunging up of the system with fraud and bad players.
Mm,
So I, for one, am absolutely wanting to know what Biden meant by we are now going to start investigating regulating crypto.
mm,
Because he didn't actually say what they're going to do. He said we're going to investigate crypto.
mm,
So I am passionate about getting the system regulated because I think regulation brings certainty of the quality asset and also the ability to get rid of the bad players. Because at the moment, we don't have a way to get rid of bad players. Great, we can put up an
Oh
alert and
yeah,
say
yeah,
this
yeah,
IP, this is a bad player, but we've got no way to counter bad players in the system at the moment. And that's why they're so
yeah,
right.
yeah.
So
You're right.
until
You're
we
right.
actually
I
have a
think
way to go, you out, go.
yeah, and to be clear, I agree. I think the Biden announcement was much more about, hey, we're going to look at this and run some task forces to actually analyze the risks and opportunity in our economic system. And I think
Hmm.
that's the right approach, right? Instead of
Agree.
coming out with a knee-jerk reaction to like, here's a regulation, like
Hmm.
let's put some funding behind actually researching this and then come up with
Hmm.
some calculated approach. And that's a healthy healthy direction. It's not regulation, it's just researching the matter officially,
Hmm.
but I think that's certainly the right direction, and the regulation that will come out of it will be healthy for the space. Absolutely.
Hmm.
I mean, who wants a fully deregulated financial system, right? We all know the results of that. I mean, you have to have some reasonable regulation. Probably you need a lot
Hmm.
more to pull on some of the shenanigans that are happening. I mean, look at these other. I mean, but look at the culture of the space. It's just, I mean, as a world traveler, Richard, and as an international artist, Shauna, I mean,
mhm,
the importance of the humanities and culture, and what
Hmm.
that does in terms of being able to advance your ability to analyze and create art projects.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, the kids creating this just don't have that because they got computer science degrees at the University of Ohio, and that just makes them world class artists. Okay, so
Hmm.
NFTs and identity. BuzzFeed outs Bored Ape Yacht Club founders. Doxing or journalism. That's what the headline says, right? Oh, just knowing the identity of one of the larger companies in the NFT space, which, by the way, is public knowledge for every private company in the country.
Hmm.
But no, these are NFT guys. If you tell the identity of the owners of the NFT project, it's doxing. And the crypto Twitter came out hard against BuzzFeed for revealing the identities of a multi-billion-dollar project that just purchased the other
That's
two biggest
stupid.
NFT projects.
It's
Hey,
mhm.
stupid.
sorry guys, if you're gonna launch the biggest company in the space, your identities have to be known.
Yeah.
Okay, so
There has to be accountability.
because yeah, otherwise it's just like, oh yeah, do you really think the government's going to be okay with secret founders of these large enterprises? Like, okay, you can run like lemmings to the cliff for a little while, but that's just not going to last. It's just not going to
Hmm.
last. So
Richard recently
um,
had a project that he brought to us to take a look at. And it was a good project, semi maturated, not quite ready for the streets, but it was a good project.
Hmm.
And beautifully designed website. What was the first thing, Richard, I told you I wanted to see? Who was behind it? Who the
Yeah.
developers were? Who the contacts were? What the address was? I
Mm.
mean, give me some hard facts and we
I
can
mean,
go from there.
the weirdness of this and I was, as I said, I did a fair bit of time in New York running the startup buzz in that and playing with venture capitalists, playing with private equities, playing the proper startup game in Manhattan. Great fun, great educational experience. I would advise everyone not to do it. Um, but what came out of that is a kind of knowledge of how the business infrastructure works and the level of hoops that you have to run through in order to get funding to do what you need to do. And in 3 years, I was looking for funding hard. I had a good project, and then just before COVID hit, I got the contracts that I needed and so on. And COVID blew it all up, but c'est la vie. But that process isn't here in NFTs. both on the side of people applying to get financial aid for NFT projects and people with money going, here's $2 million, have fun. You know what I mean
Right.
the actual planning and setup and structures inside of it? Well, there's no structures inside of it. There's people in large scale speculations all over the place. And once this moves from this point of speculation to stability, and I think Bitcoin is going to be a lot of a lead for this, and we all know it is, because when the Bitcoin price stabilizes and it becomes a tradable asset rather than a volatile asset after a large amount of adoption, we're probably talking what, 10, 15 years before that even starts looking like an appropriate thing. But from that lack of volatility, we're then able to build structures upon it with the certainty of what's going to happen. But at the moment, I think the volatility is still too scary and unregulated for us to make any accurate predictions because the risks involved are too large.
Well, I kind of want to know what Shauna's perspective is on this from the art world, because art galleries were not invented yesterday, right? So they've
Mhm.
been around. These strategies have been around. What are NFT marketplaces doing wrong, and what are they doing right, and why aren't they figuring it out? And what hurdles do they have to jump to become viable art buying places?
Well, I think, in my humble opinion, what they're doing right in some cases is building community. If you
Mhm.
have community and you have the numbers and you have the velocity behind you and the power, and there's some movement and there's a generated interest, and you've tapped into what's hot and what's current, I think
Mhm.
that's a good thing. And I think museums have often failed in that direction. But one of the things that I think that they're not doing so great is of uh, to me, as I've said to Richard many, many times, this is a long game. It's a long game.
Mhm.
And if you're coming in and you're sticking up your drawn elephant on the wall, and okay, you made your money, you sold them, now what? That's not legacy to me. It's not a full um, throughput of thought. Um, it's not something that I want to see with a certificate of authenticity behind it. But I always come back to the tenets of the establishment of blockchain. The blockchain was supposed to be a decentralized movement into a new type of exchange, a new financial exchange, the abolishment or the minimization at the very least of the fiat and the creation of an electronic digitalized token where we could make and do and exchange and buy and live. So to that end, Mark, I'm really super curious about, you alluded to Spotify, and I'd love to hear what your concerns with Spotify are and where you think that's going and why we haven't seen Spotify in the metaverse. So let's hear about Spotify.
Spotify pays 0.003 US dollars per stream. Spotify has 40,000 songs being uploaded to its and currently since around 6 million songs on the platform. Stack that up with reality. If you were to listen to a completely unique playlist of music for an entire 24-hour period, i.e., songs changing every time, that's about 400 songs would last about 24 hours. So that would be a lot of diverse music, i.e., a completely different song for 24 hours straight. Okay, 400, and there's 6 million. There's 40,000 being uploaded every day and 6 million on the platform. There seems to be a disconnect about what Spotify does and how it actually serves people. And the people that it serves the least, are musicians who have been complaining about this, and it's been decimating their ability to make money off their music going on, I don't know, 20 something years. Okay. So they are the 500-pound gorilla in the room, and Apple Music is there, but Spotify is
Mhm.
a euphemism for all of that, right? And yeah. And it's not a workable system for musicians. It hasn't been for a very long time, and it comes out in really interesting and bizarre ways. I was sitting in a cafe today. Actually, I was so inspired by this that I wrote a LinkedIn article, so anyone can check it out on my LinkedIn page. Um, and they played the same Coldplay song 3 times in the course of an hour. It is not the first time that I've listened to a Spotify playlist in a public space in which they played the same song within the span of 10 or 15 minutes. Now, here we are, massive company, uh, you know, brilliant algorithm engineers, no shortage of talent. Is it that they couldn't figure out how to make an algorithm that didn't play the same song in the course of 20 minutes? I'm sure we've all had this experience, correct?
Hmm?
Yeah. So then I got to thinking about it. I'm like, wow, this is so annoying. And of course, it's always the annoying song they play again, right? I'm like, this is so annoying. I can't believe this, right? And
What's
and then
that
I and
one?
then I
What's that one? Muskrats in Love. That's the one I always get on the elevator. Muskrats in Love.
okay, I got to look that one up. Yeah, it sounds fascinating. And Tones and I, God bless her, but damn, that song's overplayed. So, uh, yeah, it sounds like it was produced on like basically a free piece of software. Anyway,
Probably
so
was.
yeah, no, I like the production of it actually. It's just I don't need to hear it 10 times a day. Um, so so then I thought about who does this serve? Like, what is the idea of playing the same annoying song 3 times within an hour? And then I realized, oh yeah, their constituency are the big artists, the big labels. $0.003 per stream. So if they just play the song more, they're giving these artists a way bigger payout. And the biggest artists are the only ones who are actually seeing real money from the streams because they're in the
Hmm.
hundreds of millions of streams. So they're actually
Hmm.
seeing some paychecks from this. But if you're on there and you're getting like a few thousand or a few 100,000 streams, even, you're not seeing more than 50 or $60, right? So that's the problem. You can just use your imagination as to why that should be disrupted, but it's not a viable system for musicians.
I think it touches on the base of the legacy systems for artists, period. You know what I mean? Because for every story that you tell of musicians going for that, I can tell photography ones where Getty and Shutterstock and all of these kind of places are absolutely riding photographers into the ground and making them work for pennies on the dollar. 20% in some cases of the revenue goes to the photographer. 20%. It's retarded.
Right.
So,
That's really
so
bad. Yeah.
the ability, and I think that there's a case in point to say that the surge of monetizing art is coming from a place where I'm a firm believer that personality types is a thing. I'm very, very into it. And there's a very big difference in what I see people as people who are accountants and people who are creatives. They think about the world differently, and each is necessitates the other. Like having an artist who's married to an accountant, great, absolutely fantastic. Two artists married together. Trust me, there's all kinds of fireworks. It's great fun. Is our
Mhm.
accounting done very well? Not so much, but it's great fun.
Right, right.
The other side, I have an accountant friend who one day, this is one of my favorite stories about him. He's one of the loveliest people in the planet. I called him and I'm like, how are you doing today? He goes, great. My daughter has now said 23 words. I have a spreadsheet. Which is one of the cutest things I've ever heard in my life. This big accountant who's literally listed in a spreadsheet his daughter's words, but it tells you how his mind works.
Yeah.
Everything's about that. So
Mhm.
that whereas an artist, I'm like, great, let's teach her more. I'm not going to write them down. But that balance has been so skewed in success ratios at the moment. I mean, look at the US. Who are the people who are the richest? Financiers, people who are playing with the financial world and able to give money to all of these things. And artists, I think, at some stage or another, are going, why, even though I'm doing as much work, if not more, is his more valuable than mine? And then let's add into the fact that in 2008, those group of people, banking and so on, were the ones that caused the lead to the crash that we're all still suffering from, particularly millennials. So
Yeah.
why? And I think that this movement and development of a a a pathway for artists to succeed financially rather than being oppressed and pushed down by systemic companies that do not fully pay them for their work properly. And I think that the trend of that argument is happening across the board. We even look at the amount of news that's coming from that silly YouTube guy, Jake Paul, jumping up and down in the boxing world, starting to say, look at the way that these boxers are being paid. Look at the way sportsmen are being paid, taking the risk and not getting the reward for it. The trend across multiple industries is starting to look at how are these companies and accountants inside of the companies, the bean counters and so on, moving towards profit rather than taking care of the people that are giving them those profits. So I think
Well,
there's
that's
some
just that's the only game in town. Is profit.
exactly.
Only game in town when it comes to those when it comes to, the Wall Street and the Web 2 central players. So I think
Hmm.
what is a very healthy reaction right now is when we hear Meta
Hmm.
is getting into T game. I like it when the reactions are, wow, this is going to be the biggest joke I've ever heard. Okay? That's a healthy reaction.
Yeah.
That's a healthy reaction when if Spotify says, "Ooh, I'm going to do something with the NFT world now. I don't want to look like getting left out." It will be action when we say, "That sounds like the most hilarious thing I've ever heard." Okay? It will be a healthy reaction when we say, as we did earlier in this, "Oh, Google's launching blockchain." That should make everybody laugh. Okay?
Hmm.
So what we need is a culture that embraces, like, we all know the story about Facebook and Google,
Hmm.
how angelic they are and how they came to be and how they profit.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden we're supposed to just grin and smile when they are trying to break the decentralized system.
Hmm.
So look, we have to if we're interested in this space at all and we think it has any potential whatsoever, which is kind of an
Hmm.
open question, um, we have to embrace independent projects that are
Hmm.
decentralized, the smaller players, the up and comers, the quality work.
Hmm.
That's what's going to drive this. There will be the Wall Street conversation about how to make money off it. That will happen. But the
Hmm.
people that are actually doing it need to be focused on the things that are important to us, which
Hmm.
is quality work,
Shauna actually
defensible with
brought up
utility,
something.
and so on. Go ahead.
Shauna actually brought something up. We were in a conversation with a possible client a few months ago, I think now. And the idea of, I mean, if we look at restaurants, there's the Michelin star system of a way to be able to grade, feedback, give information, and test projects so that they have a ranking. You mean someone that can come on and go, okay, this project, it's smart contract works. The charities that they're working with are real. The pathways to get the money to the charities are confirmed and checked and in place. That makes this NFT a Michelin half star. And again, I'm pulling names and stuff out of my pocket, but some form of maybe regulation actually means quality control.
Absolutely. I mean, like, we know who the founders are,
Mhm,
and this is the reason they're doing the project.
mhm,
This is, some vetting of the systems they're using, i.e.,
mhm,
blockchains and marketplaces and strategies. I mean, this is what some people think about the actual work itself, and like this is why they
mhm,
think it's interesting and why it's lacking and how it could be stronger. I mean, some voices on that side, and not
mhm,
just any random cartoon of an animal. You know what I mean?
mhm,
So I agree entirely. There needs to be mature people in the space, adults in the room, and right now that I guess there's just not a whole lot.
Mark, what have you thought about? I'm sorry to interrupt, Richard. What have you thought about the concerts that have been broadcast on the metaverse spaces so far? We've seen Justin Bieber, we've seen Ariana Grande, we've seen who else did? Paris Hilton. I think we can consider being a DJ as a concert promotion. Um, who else? I'm trying to think of some other brand names. But what have you thought about this idea of transferring a music concert into a digitized virtual environment?
Well, it's sort of inevitable as just a pure extension of technology, right? I mean, 3D mapping and merged reality and as graphics get better and processors get faster and internet and 5G comes around. And I mean, like it's kind of inevitable. I mean, you can already sit kind of courtside and watch a basketball game, right,
Hmm.
in a headset. So as technology continues to grow, invariably, you'll be able to get a good view at a concert and get an awesome sound experience, perfect in your headphones or speakers, and watch a live concert. And I think it's going to be a very enjoyable experience. But I must stress, it will not be a replacement for IRL. Nothing's a
Hmm.
replacement for IRL,
Hmm.
and there will be a lot of messaging coming down the pike from the usual suspects that, oh, you don't have to worry about physical reality,
Mm.
and getting sunshine and like meeting people for coffees. No, 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 no. They want more of your screen time, more of your attention, more of your mind share, more of your ad dollars on the screen. How do they do that? They create these metaverse realities. So it'll be a very important job of NFTs, which I think actually don't require being in the metaverse, of course, right? You can NFTs
Hmm.
can be in real life too. We see that with the POAPs and so on.
Hmm.
Um, that that metaverse should complement our lives, but I ain't strapping a computer to my head and walking around. Okay,
On the
just
other
not gonna do it.
hand, on the other hand, if I'm a creator and I'm able to broadcast my concert via Sandbox, Decentraland, Superworld, I can reach the idea that I can reach exponential numbers of people than I could ever reach before in a physical stadium is extremely attractive, especially if I don't even have to be there,
I see.
especially if I
Well,
can send my digital
let me
twin.
just let me just throw a quick wrench at that, okay? Because I agree on principle, but it has to go hand in hand with a new business model. Because if you get 1 million streams on YouTube on Spotify, right? You could imagine 1 million people in the metaverse watching you. That's a heck of a lot of avatars. Okay. If we use the Spotify model, that earns you 3,000 US dollars.
That puts some perspective on it.
So
That's nuts.
just reach, and by the way, YouTube pays less. So just reach is not enough.
Yeah, but
It's
I
got
don't
to
have to
be
worry about that because my money is not coming from Joe Schmo. My money is coming from the corporate sponsor who cultivated me and attracted me to come on to their particular siloed metaverse, their walled garden, and it's corporate money. It's not
Yeah,
it's
they're
not
making their money from
individual
the
ticket
advertising
money.
dollar of the people that they've brought to the show.
well. There's you could also sell virtual tickets as NFTs. The ticket doesn't have to cost $0.003, right? Like you could pay $10 and come
I'm
see me
already
in the
in on
metaverse.
that game.
Oh yeah,
Already in on that game. I think it's one of the best ways forward, and it's one of the things we're including in our NFT,
no, that's
our upcoming
wonderful. Yeah.
product. I think the ticketing system is ripe for picking, and I think Gary V has hit onto an incredibly breakthrough idea of people being able to trade tickets to shows. I mean, it's been happening for years. I mean, I worked in Times Square selling tickets to Broadway shows for brokers who sell tickets. But in that system of brokers holding tickets in order that shows can run, so that shows have less risk of actual ticket sales to public to float the shows, it is already a mess.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
already a mess.
If
So
the
being
ticket
able
if, I'm sorry to interrupt. If the ticket provides utility,
And you
Yes,
cut.
we're all on board. Ticket really is a representation. If the ticket is really a representation of, oh, now you're a club. You know,
Mhm.
you're now a BAYC. You're one of us now. No, I'm not into this elitist uh, class systems that's going to possibly be assigned with ticketing. I want to see utility for ticketing. Go right ahead.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Well, look, why not added value? How about I buy a Broadway ticket and I also get access to the metaverse experience? Awesome. Win-win. It's going to sell more tickets. I'm excited because I get more out of my ticket. Or vice versa, I buy the metaverse experience and I get a ticket in real life. This is how we should be thinking. Added value. How to
Mhm.
enhance our experience, enhance our day-to-day lives, not replace, 10,000 years of cultural development with, strapping a computer to your head, you know?
I want to add another point on that one. The experience on a user side. Yes, I can understand that sitting with a VR goggle set makes you feel like you're there. But at the end of the day, we're still animals, boys and girls. We still require that person standing next to us, that buzz of multiple people in a stadium jumping up and down. That's part of the experience of being at a concert, not just visibly seeing the art that's performed, but the surrounding and that feeling of the feeding of the endorphins and so on that are produced by being in a crowd of people. We
Hold
can't
on,
really
Richard. Richard,
duplicate
are you are
that.
you are you saying that Woodstock would be different if it was just everybody in a matrix-like setting with a VR headset? I don't know about that. That seems like a wild
I
supposition,
don't know.
you
I'm
know?
I'm kind of I'm kind of thinking that it wouldn't be as much fun.
But what if? What if
It
you could
wouldn't be, it
bring?
would suck. It would suck. Let's be clear. It would suck.
What if you could
Okay?
bring somebody back to life? What if I could bring back Whitney, or I could bring back Michael, or I could bring back Ray Charles? Now, now we're talking about something incredibly exciting. That's to me that AR, VR, avatar, holographic hologram, create a
So I
concert
knew,
from
I knew,
somebody.
I knew, I knew. I met a guy that did exactly that. He brought back Michael Jackson in this
Hmm.
concert. I forget, it was at the MTV Music Awards or the Grammys or something, and it was holographic Michael Jackson singing "Slave to the Rhythm." And he's a 3D modeler, and he was doing all this very fine facial work. It freaking looked like Michael Jackson on stage, and people like weren't expecting it, so they were like, "What the f is this?" Right?
Talk
Um,
about Ghost in the
was it
Machine,
cool?
right?
Was it cool? Yes. Does it raise some potentially ethical issues? Do we also like why are we just listening to Michael Jackson? Like there's good musicians now out there that we should be listening to. But there right now what's going on in the music industry is, we've all heard the smooth jazzification of every hit song of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, now thousands, 2000s. And now even like a song comes out and like within 6 months there's a cover song of it, of someone doing an acoustic version, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
So personally as a music composer, I'm committed to just putting out music that I compose myself,
It doesn't fall on
you know?
blind eyes, and maybe we can close with this. We have about 5 minutes left. That the Super Bowl this year was a tribute to long established hip hop producers and artists. And this really is the music of the young generation today. So I'm curious, Mark, about what you think about how hip hop specifically can be used as a political channel or a political vehicle to work within this decentralized environment, this cryptocurrency environment. Some of the songs I'm listening to talk about, I've sold my coin, or I sold my Doge, or I got my Bitcoin. How can music be used to help us bridge the gap from here to there, in your view?
Hip hop was founded in New York City in the late 70s, early 80s, and was at the time used as a way to deflate gang tensions. People would dance, would graffiti, would rap, and would use vinyl in new ways. And there was a lot of innovation, a lot of great music that came out of that era. Um, hip hop has generally taken a downward curve, especially in the mainstream, in terms of quality of music and messaging, which now is kind of, for the most part, really, really egotistical, really demeaning, a lot of violence. Um, and I guess it's supposed to be like the cool street thing or something, but it's unfortunately, I think, probably mostly produced by, it's what corporate music is, what called boardroom music. It's
Mhm.
largely decided upon in a boardroom, like what will be promoted and what will be pushed and what will be encouraged of the artist. It's not just like an artist in a vacuum creating work. So hip hop is, I think, is a very powerful medium, to answer your question directly, to message, to create all kinds of messaging and awareness, but it cannot be removed from creating quality artwork. And there's quality hip hop with really awesome rappers, and they are there, and there's a lot of junk. So it's the exact same problem that we have in the digital art space.
Ready? I mean, the side of that I think gets interesting is what other spaces can we include?
In what?
Well, there's a growth in ways of thinking that I think is fun in this side of things, where it's not just about what's being created. It's about the story that we're telling for the space of here, bringing equality, bringing these things to the space, but it's only at a very small starting space of bringing that mentality to bear. And I think that as we educate into the system, we're going to see those things starting to come up. And that's just going to take time.
Well, I mean, look, we're at a point of potential world collapse. It's, the most erudite of our society have been very clear about that. Climate change, as well as potential nuclear war, are the two primary threats to humanity, and very serious ones, especially in this moment. Um, and for everyone to be stuck in a vapid and trivial space unceasingly, I just don't think is sustainable. And so part of what we do as artists is we try to create awareness about certain things.
Hmm.
And now there's so many ways this can get corrupted. Like we see a lot of, music and art that's like trying to make you feel good and trying to make you like do positive things, but you kind of tell that it's kind of hollow and empty and shallow and corporate. There's a lot of that. So the combination of like real artistry and also real messaging is extremely rare, and that's the kind of thing we need across the art space. And every person who has a platform, I don't care if you were rapping about this or that yesterday.
Yeah.
We all got to be on board for using our platform and using our messaging to push this ship in the right direction. Or there's
Hmm.
not going to be a ship for much longer, folks.
I
Mm.
think the other thing
Okay.
that we have to think about there is making sure that the people with influence who get into the space are doing it legitimately and not just money grabbing.
Mm.
Because some of the projects that have been put up by celebrities are shockingly scary.
Mm.
I mean, I went through and just had a look at what Snoop Dogg did, and here's a big, massive name, and the NFTs are not that pretty. You know what I mean? So,
So I
so what
should
is that?
say,
Is it a money grab? Or?
very important that you brought up Snoop Dogg. He is the single most enterprising artist right now in the music
Hmm.
NFT space.
In
Hmm.
this space, I agree
I
And
agree.
completely.
I thought smoking a lot of cannabis was supposed to make you lazy, but it seems to have put something in him to create these be on every music
No,
NFT platform.
he's
And yeah,
been he's been a businessman since straight out of Compton.
Hmm.
He's phenomenal and definitely a leader in the space. But gentlemen, I'm so sorry we have to close, and on such a exciting and interesting note too. Uh, Mark, I want to say personally, thank you very much for tonight, and it's our pleasure and honor to have you here. It was an engaging and entertaining uh, lesson. We covered a lot of ground. And Richard, I want to say thank you to you for being such a great host and asking such great questions. Was there anything that either one of you wanted to close with before we say goodnight?
I do want to close with one thing. Mark, I know you want to close as well, but I want to say thank you for Shauna for the help in making sure we have the platform and the people that you have grown into the platform that we get to provide this information to. And then also, Mark, this has been great fun. Thank you.
Thank you both. I really enjoyed it. And, I would just close by saying we are extremely early in this space. And the only
Hmm.
reason that I'm being very critical is because I think it has immense potential to really transform the economy and transform the lives of artists. But if you're an
Hmm.
entrepreneur or you're thinking of launching a project, it is not too late. It is still extremely early. And I encourage everyone to consider new ways and new directions and new collaborations to start new initiatives in the space.
Completely agree.
Collaborate.
Completely
Hmm.
agree, but do your research first.
Hmm. And I think that that word there that we've been able to put out and that's coming through more through the artists around here is this is a collaboration. And the
Yes.
more we collaborate, the better we will be throughout the entire space.
Thank you. Good night, everyone. We'll see you next week. And until then, take good care.